Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 320 being recorded on the 1st of October 2014. I'm Ryan Schraub.
Jeremy Hellstrom.
Josh Walrath.
No, I'm Alan Mamatano.
It's an exciting day. By the way, I woke up this morning and had no idea it was October.
Really?
Yeah, oh, absolutely did not. I saw somebody post, I think it was Delta Airlines, post on Twitter. It's like, oh, we're celebrating the first day of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I went, you idiots, it's not even October yet. Like, that's literally what the thought that went through my head. And I looked down the corner, and it was like October 1. I was like,
Nah.
damn, I got some stuff I got to do today. So, it's October. September was over pretty quick.
Yep.
It was kind of a
September wasn't very busy at all.
No, like no
There
hardware.
were no CPUs. There were no
No.
GPUs. No motherboards. Nothing.
Yeah, it was a pretty
Nothing.
stale
It was
month.
barren. It's a wasteland.
It was. In case you guys didn't notice, this is a podcast for our website, PCPro.com. We record it on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Usually I do that the other direction, so I had to think about it longer. We record it live, and we post it the next day for you guys to watch. If you want to watch us record live, I highly encourage you to do so. If you go to PCPro.com/subscribe, you can sign up for a nifty little mailing list. That allows you to we'll notify you essentially when we go live, and it's not just for this podcast, although obviously that is of utmost importance to you. Last week, for example, we had 2 other live streams besides our podcast. We had a stream with NVIDIA's Tom Peterson. We had a stream with EVGA's Jacob Freeman, in which we gave away a lot of stuff. Motherboards, video cards, power supplies, mice. We gave away a ton of stuff, and if you're on our mailing list, you would have been notified about those special events.
Hey, you know what, Ryan?
What?
I was not notified that I was a winner.
That's so weird.
I know.
So weird, but by my math, everybody that I emailed about winning had replied, so that's kind of odd. You should check your spam folder just to be sure, though,
I should.
or make sure maybe one of your kids didn't reply for you. Give me a different.
If you get a biggest so if 59@hotmail.com, that's not me. Not me at all.
Fair enough. Please ship to Laramie, Wyoming. Wait a minute.
Nobody lives there.
Yeah.
Nobody lives in
It's a
Laramie.
P.O. box.
All right, let's talk about some stuff that happened this week. First thing is we're gonna go through some things quicklier tonight.
Quicklier.
We've talked quicklier. We've talked about it quite a bit. The Samsung 840 Evo TLC flash issues. Nothing has really changed except that they had released an update. Samsung, I guess.
An updated statement.
But they released an update. They released a statement. There's no update. There's no firmware update. There's no fix.
We had a statement at the end of this article
Yeah.
from them.
Oh, we did.
Right.
An original one.
Yeah.
And there's a statement from me. I'm pissed because my computer is significantly slower
Well,
because it's my OS drive.
something that's not in the statement, but that I've kind of heard is October 15th.
Okay.
Ish.
So, I mean, they basically say we acknowledge the issue. They claim that it's only a small subset of users. We regret the inconvenience. Firmware update will resolve the issue soon. We have some debate with the idea of it being a small subset because it's really all of them.
I think it's pretty much anybody that notices.
It's anybody, but it's if you notice it or not.
Yeah.
I guess is
Well,
the
it's the
concern.
same percentage as those that bought iPhone 6s that bend. You know? Just
iPhone
a
6 Pluses.
few. Just
iPhone 6
not
Plus.
many.
They all can bend. The idea is will they, or will you notice it? Alan already noticed his.
It didn't bend.
You said you had to bend it back and then it laid
It
flush
was a little
again.
twisted.
Yeah, that's bending.
Oh,
Spindle leaving.
it's straight.
Okay.
Chrome Dome.
If
did
you
not
had to
bend.
guess, what would their fix be?
You mean other than just a firmware?
No, what would the
Titanium.
firmware do?
Titanium skeleton.
What are we on phones or it says
No,
SDs?
we're not. We don't talk about phones. We're
okay.
talking about this.
They would have to do some kind of change. Again, we're guessing on what's even causing the slowdown. Right. But if after you've written to flash, the voltages kind of drift slowly over time, like really slowly, but it does happen, right? There's ways to adjust what those thresholds are as you go to read those bits back.
Can you just
basically.
refresh the voltage without taking up a write cycle? Or is
No.
that the idea, the essence of a write cycle?
That is,
Okay.
yeah. That's the thing. You can only up the voltage Like it only goes one way while you're doing a write cycle to it, and then an erase cycle is what brings it back down to 0 or 1, depending on which way it's set up, right? But basically, they just have to compensate for the voltage drifting when they go to read it back, so that there's not so many bits reading incorrectly that they have to do error correction.
Okay.
Yeah. So
interesting.
But I don't know.
We'll see.
I'm not sure that Samsung can do that kind of a thing with their flash. I would assume they can. I know Intel can, just because I've seen enough Intel stuff and been doing enough briefings, right? Samsung's never briefed people to that level, so we don't know if that flash can do that. But if they say there's a fix coming,
okay,
don't really seem like they're covering anything up or being sketchy about if it could be fixed or not. It was just a matter of, hey, we have to get through quality control.
We got to figure it out, and then QC it, and then go on. Okay. Well, we will be sure to update you as we hear more, because we know a lot of people have those SSDs.
Yep.
Maury posted a review of the X99 classified motherboard. This is a motherboard for the brand new Haswell-E platform. So Jacob was out here on Friday, and this is one of the boards that we discussed, and I like the board design. I like the all-black board design. Sorry, Jeremy, there's no dual processor versions for us to talk about.
Yeah, I know.
Quite yet.
I got the new Xeons, so maybe.
Yeah, I referenced you several times throughout the live stream, talking about your disappointment that there had been no update. Pretty nice motherboard in terms of feature set. Obviously, because it's from EVGA, you expect them to have a lot of graphics card support. It does support 4-way SLI, and it does support Crossfire. If you want to run Crossfire in an EVGA motherboard, you can do that. 8 DIMM slots, all the normal things you get.
But how is audio? Everybody's been hammering on audio on motherboards lately. How is it? I mean, you look at the large amounts of space that are kind of wasted on that board. Yeah. I mean, fill them up with capacitors.
So what you're looking at here is, so if you look at the board, where a lot of other vendors have like dedicated audio routing right up here, kind of between the bottom left corner of the motherboard and the top of the connectors, they don't really have that, and instead they've added things that they would consider, and that I would consider, like, I don't know, power user options, right? You've got this additional 6-pin PCI Express power connector that is used to supply extra power for PCI Express slots if you're maybe doing 3 or 4-way SLI. They've also have a second M.2 slot here. So you've got one between these bottom PCI Express slots, and you've got another one here. So you actually have a little bit more flexibility in that regard, which I think is pretty cool. If you wanted to have an SSD, and then also have one for maybe Wi-Fi or something, because their boards don't include integrated wireless connectivity. I'll show you this here too. I would say they don't integrate any third-party USB 3.0 controllers either, so you're limited to 4 USB 3 ports on the back and 2 for the front panel. And then they filled it out with 6 other USB 2.0 connections, which is fine, you know, for your headsets and your keyboards and your mice and everything. You just focus on those USB 3.0 ports for storage. Both those gigabit connections are Intel based. Like I said, you do have 4-way SLI support, which, you know, is tough to do on an X99 board. If you look up here, you'll see the top PCI Express slot is pretty close in proximity to the DIMM slots because of that, right? But that's going to be an issue with any motherboard you have that does 4-way SLI. It's going to have that complication just because of the physical size of the ATX form factor. There you can see the M.2 socket 1. You've got your PCI Express connection there, your M.2 socket 3. I'm not really sure what happened to 2.
What you going to do with all that power?
Naming designations?
On where?
Socket 1 versus socket 3. So this can support the triple length M.2, and this can support the single length.
I've never heard them called socket.
Me neither.
That usually it's a number that's the number of millimeters in length the card is, like 80 or.
Nobody likes complicated metrics like that.
Like
just
standards?
socket 1, socket 3. I don't
guess.
know if that's really what they're going for. Everything they have on this board is kind of side mounted, which I think is pretty cool. Like if you look at the fan connectors, they're at 90 degrees. The USB 3.0 connection is at 90 degrees. Sysfan 90 degrees. SATA ports are 90 degrees.
Notice it has a speaker on the motherboard. If you scroll back up.
Oh, right here.
A little round thing.
It's not very often you see that anymore, is it?
Yeah, so you can actually get the, you know,
beep.
the old school beep. Yeah.
Yeah. There's the CMOS battery for.
Yes, very important. Not vertical.
Ooh, that looks like it's a nice place.
Should be. Yeah.
Unplug it.
Yeah, unless you're doing 3 or 4-way SLI, you should be able to get access to that. 10 SATA ports. No SATA Express.
That's fine with me.
That's fine with you?
That is fine with me.
Why is that?
Because you really haven't. There haven't been that many.
Have yet to see any devices?
Right.
Okay. Fair enough.
And not only that, but SATA Express is actually limited to just a couple of lanes of PCIe.
2. Yep.
3.0. Mm-hmm. Now, it does also pass SATA.
Yes.
That connector.
But does it say, excuse me?
Connector. You get one SATA 6 gigabit and a couple of PCIe. What is it? I think it's PCIe. I think it supports PCIe 3.0 over that. But you're very limited on the length of the cable, and there's just.
Now I do want to point out one thing with the CPU spacing on this. If you look at Maury's giant heatsink test for this thing, you'll notice that, especially, so this is even the worst possible case scenario for this particular setup. We've got an MSI card with the, what do we call that on the back, Josh?
Reactor.
The reactor.
That thing sitting on top of it looks like a reactor.
And so you can see here, if you look vertically, like this enormous heatsink interferes with that primary PCI Express slot, even if you didn't have a reactor on your video card. So keep that in mind. If nothing, like, it's not a deficit for you to use that second PCI Express slot, because it's a Haswell E platform. It's going to have 16 lanes.
Or you can just use a regular cooler.
Well, that sounds boring.
Or how about just a self-contained liquid cooling system?
You could do that too. Any of the above would fix that problem. That's why I had this discussion with Maury. I was like, hey, it's really not that big a deal. Like, yes, you should point it out, because that's it. Hey, if you have a big air-cooled heatsink and you want to use it, you're not going to be able to use that primary PCI Express slot.
So, Alan, I have a quick question for you. Mm-hmm. Does heavy water have better thermal characteristics than regular light water?
Don't
we got an extra, neutron hanging around.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's a little heavier.
Take up some more heat. You know what I'm saying?
No, actually, while it's decaying, it will create heat.
Yeah.
So your water will be heating up your system. So I don't know if you really want that.
Worst idea.
And then you'll have high energy neutrons and electrons and like alphas from like the decay all very close to your CPU.
Oh, that can't be bad at all.
Flipping bits.
That's not going to flip a bit at all.
Oh, no. Probably would. Yeah, so.
We're only talking gamma radiation does that. That's not gamma radiation. It's just neutron radiation.
Let's see. What does it do?
Let's try it.
I think it just beta minus decays. From oxygen.
You're the nuke engineer, man.
Yeah.
So go check out this review that Maury wrote. There's a lot more information there. Benchmarks, overclocking, all that. It's a $399 motherboard. It is their flagship. It's the classified. So a lot of good stuff there. Overclocking potential is a strength. Board aesthetics I like as well. CPU socket layout and spacing. If you like 4-way graphics card configurations, this is one to look at. So check it out.
Okay, one last question. And this is a serious one.
No, it's not.
Does it have a discharge button?
It does not. If you want to discharge it, you have to do that manually.
Damn it.
It doesn't have the jumper?
You got to... What?
The jumper? Doesn't have the jumper?
The discharge button.
Discharge?
No, I get it.
I'm sure it does. Like, yeah, well, let's see.
It just gives you the chance to make the connection with your finger.
CMOS reset jumper.
Oh, so it doesn't have the jumper either.
But it has a button on the back.
It has two buttons.
It has 2 buttons.
Right.
It has a discharge button, but it's more like a reset button.
But if it has a button, it doesn't need the jumper.
I would agree.
Okay.
Okay, up next, real quick on this, iPhone 6 performance numbers. Ken ran his fancy new A8 SoC through some benchmarks. And here's what we got. For those of you interested in mobility performance. A8, A7, Tegra K1, the Bay Trail Atom, is it Bay Trail? Yeah, it is, right? Silvermont-based architecture Atom Z3745, and the somewhat aging Snapdragon S4 and the Nexus 7. What do we get out of this just handful of benchmarks? One, the Tegra K1 is still like a really, really, really good SoC in terms of performance. Now, the Tegra K1 is not in a cell phone infrastructure. It is not in a very space-constrained, thermally constrained environment. It's in a tablet.
Yep.
That has a much larger heat sink and everything. So
better battery.
Yeah. But some of this is to be expected.
Harder to bend.
Harder to bend a little bit. We could do that test too. And so, but maybe it's more interesting to look at is the comparison of the A7 to the A8. If you look at it, I mean, it's a CPU increase, it's a GPU increase, but both of those are fairly modest. A little bit more on the GPU side. You can see here going from score of 19,000 to 22,000. Let's see. Where's our other GPU test? Here you go. The graphics bench Manhattan off-screen test, which actually normalizes resolutions, right? So everybody's rendering at the same resolution. Tegra K1 still dramatically ahead of the Apple A7 and the Apple A8, but the Apple A8 is an increase over the A7. So CPU tests, it is a little bit faster than the A7 as well, and it kind of varies back and forth. Tegra K1 loses in the SunSpider benchmark, essentially ties, maybe a little bit ahead in the Google Octane benchmark. All that being said, Ken, anything exciting about, have you noticed any performance differences, or now you got an OS change and everything, it's pretty hard to tell?
It's pretty battery efficient.
It is battery efficient?
Yeah. It seems
your battery life is better on
one.
this device than it was before?
Did it get you a new girlfriend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's money well spent.
That's pretty efficient.
The OS itself is kind of a piece of
Was that
garbage
before
right
or
now,
after
but-
the OS update,
Yeah.
Ken?
I mean, your phone has the same processor in it.
Yep.
Is it a noticeable change, or is it just kind of
In battery life or performance?
performance?
I mean, the performance I'd say is
Feels the same,
Yeah.
essentially,
Feels
for
the
the
same.
tasks that you're doing.
Yep.
Okay, that's kind of what I think most people were banking on, or not banking on, but what they had, what their results were, what they expected. So, NVIDIA has a good part with the Tegra K1. It's obviously not going to make it in phones. I'd be curious to take apart a phone and measure battery consumption and power consumption at the battery during some of these tests and see which one's actually more efficient. The K1 can be way faster, but if it's using 3 times as much power.
It seems like a lot of these other guys are waiting for 16 nanometer FinFET before their next generation SoCs, and when that happens, it's going to be good stuff. Because
the A8's 20 nanometer, right? And
it's
the
20
other ones
nanometer,
are 28.
but you know what? TSMC's 20 nanometer planar, it's not fantastic. I mean, yeah, they got better transistor density. In low power stuff, it does okay. But once you start kind of cranking up the clock speed, the voltage ramps up really, 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 really fast. And so it's interesting to see that Apple utilizes 20 nanometer. But I guess the way they do their product cycle, they didn't have a choice. And from what I hear, they bought up the entire capacity of TSMC's 20 nanometer planar and have for the next several months. So
supposedly Samsung's doing some of them still too.
At 20?
Interesting.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily know if I believe that, but I've seen that a lot of places. It says Samsung's still backfilling, and apparently they're doing 20.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I did not heard that Samsung. The next I've heard is they're calling it a 14 nanometer process that they're working with Global Foundries with. Otherwise, it's 28 nanometer and 32 nanometer from Samsung. So I don't know. Interesting to hear if we can get any confirmation one way or the other.
They tend to not confirm anything.
Whatever happens to the NVIDIA super awesome cell phone radio thing?
Their LTE modem is it's actually in use in the new Shield tablet LTE that came out.
Oh, okay. So that did
their programmable shader, their programmable LTE modem. Yeah, it's still a thing. And I think there's another device that's using it. That's a larger device, like a more popular device, but I can't remember offhand what it is. So, if you want to see those iPhone 6 and A8 benchmarks for yourself, just go to the website and look for the article titled "iPhone 6 and Apple A8 SoC Performance Preview," and you'll find them. Compare your own device. All right, let's talk about an SSD release that occurred this week. It's a technology we've already talked about for a little while, or I guess a couple of weeks. The Micron M600 SSD digging into dynamic write acceleration. So
dynamic write acceleration is their ability to flip dies between SLC and MLC mode.
Okay, which basically means the physical chip is the same.
Yep.
But simply by changing the way that the controller is talking to it, you can essentially change that physical device from a multi-layer cell to a single-layer cell and back.
Yep. It can basically change the mode of it. It writes to some area of it, like configuration or something.
Okay.
Right. And basically just says, all right, you're SLC now. And then you have to start fresh. The die has to be empty.
You have to clear it.
Yep.
And then refill it with new data in that new mode. Right. Okay.
Right. So in theory, you would have an SSD come when it's empty, when it's in the box. It's probably mostly SLC.
So say you bought a, 256 gig
Sure.
SSD.
Yep. So 256 gig SSD internally could probably only address, starting off, a little bit over 128 gig because most of the dies are in SLC mode and you get half the capacity. Right. But the controller just kind of intelligently pays attention to how much you've actually filled the drive. And then as that happens, it starts moving data in the background off of SLC onto MLC. And it gets kind of complicated, as you might imagine, right? You might catch the controller with, oh no, it ran out of SLC and it has another 20 gig of MLC over here, so I'll just write at a slower speed to that.
Right.
And then,
correct.
Then once you start to run out of that, then the controller has to actually kind of stop you by making the write speed very, very slow. And then while you are waiting at like 50 meg per second or something very slow write speed, it is in the background scrambling and moving data off of SLC onto MLC and kind of flipping dies.
The idea is it's completely transparent to the user and to the operating system, except for the
notice
potential performance impact that it has on you.
Right. The operating system sees it at the full capacity.
Yeah.
Right. It formats at the full capacity. It's just that it's almost like thin provisioning, but for flash memory. Right. And then in the background, it unthin provisions itself as you fill it up.
Right.
Right. The advantage is SLC flash, the power draw is much less when it writes.
Okay.
Okay. So you get savings there. The speed is much faster. When you're writing to the 128 gig model, which uses the 128 gigabit flash, so that means you only have like 8 dies in the 128 gig model. So that's not very many to spread and be parallel as far as writing. So that write speed is usually like 150 meg per second, but it's actually I think a little bit over 400 when those dies are in SLC mode.
Okay.
Right. So you get a very large boost, but the catch is that in practice, we had to generate a completely new way of testing these things.
So let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
The idea, our normal testing methodology is well laid out on the website. It's in there every time.
Yep.
But this time, because the drive would in theory act different at different capacity fill levels.
Correct.
We had to change things. You were basically filling it to a certain percentage and then rerunning tests and then filling it some more and rerunning tests and filling it some more and rerunning tests.
Yep.
Right.
And the way that I filled it was only in 10% increments.
Okay.
And with actually giving the drive time to idle.
So you would fill it from say 20 to 30%, and you would give it time to idle because that's what Micron said. It was when your system was in idle is when it would start to look at this cleanup process of whatever it needed to do to reorganize to optimize for improved performance.
Right. And so we did that.
Yep.
And the end result was kind of the simplest way to say it is they were kind of all over the place as far as.
We just switch to the M600 results page here.
That's probably the good one to go to.
So the M600 128 gig. Now we're looking at a bunch of successive file copy, Windows file copy results screenshots. What am I looking at?
So
Are these at 10, 20, 30?
What I grouped together there was all 10 of the 10% copies. Now realize this is over the span of several days worth of testing. I just consolidated them all together and to say, okay, this is what it looked like when we filled it from 0 to 10%, from 10 to 20. Right?
Okay.
And you'll notice that at the SLC speed, it's actually pretty speedy, right? 443 meg per second, right? But it's kind of hit or miss because if you notice...
So the second graphic is only when you had it filled 10%?
It was only filled 10%, and it was left idle plenty of time.
So you had what looks to be about about the same performance up here, and then you had this very dramatic drop off down about like 150 megs per second. Right.
So it only wrote like that file was about 12 gig.
Okay.
Right. So it only wrote maybe 3 gig there, and then it dropped to the MLC speed. So we actually caught it running out of SLC, or at least it thought it did, and then it had to revert back to MLC mode.
But interesting, the very next graph down is a very fast, consistent 440.
Exactly. And we weren't really doing so much different between those two different times.
Yeah. So this was at 0, and then 10, and then 20, and then 30. 30 again, pretty fast. And then at 40%, we get another drop down to 150.
Right.
50%, another drop down to 150.
And then it seems like they're getting shorter and shorter, but then once you get to like the third from the end there, it actually gave you a much longer time of SLC speed.
These are all the same file sizes.
Same exact file.
12 gig files.
That's all I did was I renamed it to a different name and copied the same file to the drive again.
Okay.
Right. So it's the same exact operation. That sort of thing. So as far as trying to gauge like when you were going to get the speed and for how long, I could not come up with any kind of a connection.
When you tested other capacities at 256 gig, you can see here, it seemed maybe a little bit faster at the beginning sections. We went down to 305 at 0, but you were at 466, 466, 464, 467.
Yeah.
And then you get that drop-offs.
And then we got the drop-off for one cycle worth, but then it went full speed the next cycle.
And then it went as low as like 76 or 77 megs per second.
So that's the point where you completely catch it
when you can
off guard, and it's now run out of MLC, or just about to. And now it has to start flipping dies in the background while you're doing the write. That's what drops it to that 76 meg per second speed.
Gotcha.
Right.
Now, on the 1 terabyte results, it's a little bit different, though. Because
there's a couple of factors there. First of all, with the 1 terabyte model, even if everything was MLC, which it actually most likely is for this drive, which we can cover a little bit more in a second, but you have so many dies in parallel that you can get the full speed.
Okay.
Right.
So because it's a 1 terabyte drive, you're getting 64 die in it, probably?
No, it's 16 into... It's 8 times...
128 gigabit die.
Yeah, it's 8 times 8. Oh, that's 64.
That's right.
There you go. Sorry.
Math. How does it work?
It's been a long week.
But those writes seem pretty consistent. We had a little bit of an issue at the end on the last one when it was almost full.
Yep.
But why is that? Why do you think those are more consistent? Because why?
Well, the thing is, this drive is not supposed to use that technology on the 1 terabyte model.
Right.
But even though that was happening, it was still a little bit confusing because we noticed there was what appeared to be a high speed, which was 467, 68 meg per second. And then for the last few passes there, it dropped to 448 or 447. So it dropped by 20.
Yeah.
Which kind of made me think that, well, maybe it is a SLC, MLC speed difference. It was acting similarly. And even at the very end, it actually dropped way down.
Way down, yeah.
On that last copy. I'm not sure if maybe it just got forced to clean up some fragmented pages or something.
Because you're essentially filling the drive at that point. Right?
That actually brought it to like 96%.
Yeah.
Our files were actually just a little bit lower than 10, but just for consistency, I'd kept referring to them by 10% increments.
Sure.
But once you had all 10 of them on the drive, it was like 96.5% full or something like that.
Okay.
Basically, it gave us enough time left to be able to do some tests with it, all the way.
Yeah.
Right. And if you scroll down a little more, you can see the differences in the effect of like what performance you would get doing random access to a file on the drive. And what we noticed there, and we just did those simple with ATO runs. We did some other tests, but they didn't really show differences
50% on the M600 256 gig. Seems like a lot of variance in the write speeds, anywhere from 350 to 470 to 500 to 350 to 330.
Yep. And the key point to take home there is that so the ATO run uses a 256 megabyte test file that it puts in place on the SSD, right? Now to get inconsistency that looks like that, it tells me that when you put a file on the SSD and the controller maps out where that file is going to go, right? Like which memory it gets written to, which flash memory, whether it be in SLC mode or MLC mode, right?
Right.
That indicates to me that it's actually... It might have put it in SLC at the beginning, But then as you're doing random writes within that file, it might actually be doing other writes to other areas of flash.
So single files could be written to SLC and MLC, perhaps.
They could be. It might just be reallocating, you know, even though you're writing within the same file that appears to be on the disk in the same place. And that's kind of a wear leveling thing, right?
Right.
Like you wouldn't want to just burn out that same 256 meg section with flash, right? But it's kind of a negative in this respect because you don't know if your performance is just going to suddenly drop to MLC speeds even within the middle of a file.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, and that was with the drive only at 50%.
So, answer this then. All the stuff we talked about, does that affect all other SSDs? Is this unique to this M600 because of...
As far as changes in consistency as the drive fills?
Yeah.
So, we actually tested 840 EVO.
Right. What
did the same exact results, and Atto was identical between like 0 and...
So it did not show the variance?
Yeah, there was no variance like this. Also, on something like the Evo that has... You would say that's the competitor to this, right? Because it has a cache kind of a technology. While this is not cache, it does have a higher speed, right? And a lower speed,
It's a different mode to it, yeah.
Where the Evo just has a fixed, you get this many gigabytes of SLC, right? And it's always that many. And if you flip through that page and you kind of scroll through those writes, every single write is identical. You get X amount of so much of the file is in a high speed, and then so much more of the file is in a low speed every single time, and it's for the same duration every time. So it's more like you know exactly what you're going to get with that. You know, it's now.
So what's good?
The only thing aside is they have to fix their read speed slowdown thing.
Issue,
right, that's a different issue. But assuming that gets fixed with the firmware, and I'll give them the benefit of a doubt because you know it's coming. So if that gets fixed, that means that drive is very consistent, has a high speed, has a low speed. If you give it a few seconds to breathe, you're right back to the high speed again.
So what's the takeaway from the M600 then? Is it just a good idea not implemented correctly in this first attempt?
It's a good... I think firmware tweaks could make this better.
Okay.
But it just doesn't seem like all the way there yet.
That stinks because like if you... I mean, maybe it might be fair to say that like if you look at the 1 terabyte model, it might be fine. Because it's not even using the dynamic write allocation or whatever it's called.
That's true.
Right, and that's where you get the 44 cents per gigabyte cost as well.
That's also true.
Right.
But this testing also pointed out something else that was an inconsistency. It's actually at the very bottom of the M600 page.
Yep.
And that's where, during part of this testing, when we got it to the point of being halfway full, I ran iometer. Basically, these files that we were putting on the drive were iometer test files. And then I would just rename them to some other name. And then I would go back partway through the filling over time of these drives, and I ran a random workload, and not for a really long time either. It was like a 5 or 10 minute run, and it wasn't really a brutal workload either. It was basically the kind of workload that we usually put on our PC Perspective iometer testing.
Sure.
Right? So we just ran a lap of that on the first 10%, the file that was the first 10%, right? And then when I got to 50%, I attempted to read all 5 files off of the drive.
Okay, that's what I'm looking at here.
And that's what you're looking at there. So the 128, 256, and the 1 terabyte, all 3 of them showed a obvious reduction in the speed that you could read that file back.
At the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, and it is literally as soon as it gets past that file is when the speed jumps up back to full speed. And that we did not see that on drives like the Evo.
Okay.
Like on the Evo page, at the very bottom of that page, I showed the same results, and it's basically a flat line at full speed.
Right.
So, you know, it's just these drives in general, the Micron ones, tend to be on the inconsistent side compared to, competing drives. So
there's a lot more data and stuff in there. If you're curious about it, I still like, when we were learning about it, I thought the technology was incredibly interesting, and I thought, wow, this could do some really, really cool things with performance versus capacity versus cost.
Yeah, and the other thing that
it may still do that if they can fix it, if they can kind of make this a better, more coherent thing.
And the other thing that really confused me was that according to their literature, for the 2.5 inch models, the 512 and the 1 terabyte model do not use this technology.
Why would that be the case?
They could get away with saying they didn't need the speed boost, but the other thing that they were trumpeting about this technology was that, look, the power draw is so much less
when
you're
in
in SLC mode.
Yeah.
To the point where if you really wanted really low power draw, as long as the implementation was maybe a little smoother and more consistent, you could potentially just buy the 1 terabyte model because you wanted SLC speed all the time and only ever fill it to like 400 gig.
Right.
Because where else could you buy a 400 gigabyte SLC SSD for, well, it'll be more cents per gig, but it would be like it would be like $1 per gig if you think it through that way, right? Which is dirt cheap for an SLC SSD.
Yeah, if you can even find them anymore.
Well,
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know.
Right. Also on the website this week, Lee posted a review of the Seasonic Platinum Series 1050 and 1200 watt power supplies. I'm not going to go over these too much, but they are beasts of units, of course. And if we look at, let's see. I like the part where we look inside. Oh, fully modular, hybrid mode, and normal mode. You'll have to read the review to see exactly what that means. Oh, that's for the fan control there. He gives you the outline here of what the fan control looks like. Can be fully silent. And lots of cable connections. There it is. There's the inside. Always look at the inside of these power supplies. Look at that stuff. Huge.
Big capacitors.
I think both of these got the gold award from Lee, so that's a solid endorsement. You can get the 1050 watt for $174 and the 1200 watt for $240. And these are 80 plus platinum. So in terms of efficiency, they're going to be the best you can get. Save you a little bit of money, but you are going to think you're going to pay more than the cost back and efficiency that you'll get.
Just don't forget the efficiency falls in a certain range of power on those. So if you're speccing your system out and you're only going to have like 1 GPU in there and 1 CPU, don't buy this just because it's the best thing. You're actually going to be less efficient than if you kind of matched your power supply to your...
Yeah. And he actually, let's see, if you look at, he has efficiency curves in here for the 1050. You can see in the 90s. This is the top here is the percent load, and then the left column here is efficiency. So you're looking at over 90% from 20 to 100% load.
That's a decent range.
Yeah. And then on the 1200 watt unit, it's a little bit lower than that, but still stays above 90%. Pretty much the whole way. Once you get above like 240 watts.
Yeah, it's 110 versus 240 though. So.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I was looking at the 240 line. So
yeah,
a little bit lower on the 115.
Us US people are so far behind.
So far behind.
So far.
It's a hard metric to stand up to.
You know, you're getting at 600 watts, you're getting 92.2% efficiency. So,
pretty good.
Yeah. And platinum means you have to have over 92%, and 92.2 is over 92. So
it is.
Hence 80 plus platinum. All right, let's talk with Josh real quick here about the ARM Cortex M7. What's the quick and dirty on this? Right, we know about Cortex A series parts. What's the M series?
Okay, the M series is their embedded things. It's their low power, low performance. They're going to be embedded in
IoT,
machines, I/O stuff, routers,
refrigerators.
Yeah, like exactly Internet of Things. That's the popular term that we're looking at. This is a decent part in terms of compute capabilities. But it is not destined for a multimedia-rich type application like cell phones or TVs, stuff like that. It's not good for it. What it is good for is replacing DSPs. It's got a floating point unit that can handle single and double precision. It is decent at integer. It's programmable and flexible as compared to other like DSPs. You can do a lot of things with it. It can be manufactured on 90 nanometer process all the way down to 28 nanometer right now. And it's a significant jump in performance from the previous Cortex M series, like the M4. M0 Plus, M0, M4.
Did you get consent from ARM to publish this slide?
I did not, and so we're illegal, and we're going to be arrested.
We're so screwed now.
You know, the Bobbies are going to be at your door, knocking, and you're going to run away, and they're going to say, "Stop," or we shall say, "Stop again." Yes.
See, I know that reference.
Yes, Robin Williams.
Yeah, May rest in peace. Anyway,
yeah, it's going to be low power. In fact, their lowest power version. You know those little BIOS batteries that Maury likes so much?
Yeah.
One of those can run kind of continuously on that power for many, many years. Like at the absolute maximum, like 15 years.
So before I lost it, I had a, what was that called, Ken? I had a activity tracker.
Oh, the Misfit.
The Misfit Shine, and it ran on a watch battery.
Yep.
And it lasted 4 months, and then I lost it in a lake, and so I don't really know.
It's still working.
It's probably still down there working because it was waterproof, but
not buoyant.
Some bass has probably picked it up and figured out the strokes.
If I can get it near Wi-Fi again.
Oh yeah, you'd be tracking a bass.
I need to go. Yeah. I need to go fishing and see if I can catch it.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
What are you fishing for? One particular bass.
One particular bass. And I'm not going to know if it's it until I cut open his stomach and
Where's
see
he at?
if it's
Hold on, let me look at my phone again. Did he?
Unfortunately, it didn't have GPS. Anyway, Josh, go ahead.
That guy's got 1,700 strokes in since the last check. So damn him. So yeah, it's they're available very soon. The designs are out there. They're being licensed, and ARM is just not standing still. Again, these are products that you will not see in cell phones. But you will see in your tracker watch.
Yep.
Because it doesn't require heavy duty graphics. It doesn't require super compute power.
And it's cheap, right? Because Ken laughed when you said 90 nanometer for what it's being manufactured, but that allows them to get the cost way down there. Well, and if you look at what they've done with 90 nanometer, like they have it so perfected. That for certain frequency bands and performance bands, they probably got that power consumption and efficiency incredibly low.
And not only that, if they're only using one of these single cores in this application, you're going to need a bigger process node because otherwise you're not going to have enough pin outs on the design to be able to do anything. It's like, I'm running this at 28 nanometer, I can have a power and ground. Who cares about data? I'm going to have this processor just doing power and ground.
But it'll run forever.
I think that's fine. I see no problem with that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to some other stuff from the week. Jeremy, remember Euclideon? Remember the guy with the very Australian accent?
Mm-hmm.
That talked to us about this infinite detail game engine that they were working on. This is actually pretty impressive.
Still are.
And a lot of people said that it was all fake and everything, but they're kind of out there now starting to talk about something new. It's a little bit different, but what is it that we're looking at here? The voxel point clouds, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So what they're doing at this point is they've figured out a way to use a 3D scanner to scan an environment, which is one of the commenters pointed out, pretty much LiDAR. And they're then able to build an environment off of that. Now, that's sort of what they were showing before. It's interesting to say that this time they were saying Maya 3ds Max. If you can program this, it's still going to render at that sort of quality or resolution. What they were sort of new about on this one was the speed. What they sort of mentioned at one point was a $600 laptop able to load a 3 terabyte model, because these are not going to be small, boys and girls, but a 3 terabyte model of the city of Vienna in 0.8 seconds. And that was sort of their demo, was that they went through this lovely cathedral in Vienna church cathedral, whatever you want, and did it.
This has to be a 3 terabyte compressed to something that a computer actually has the bandwidth to transfer model?
This is what they're saying, although you're probably going to be looking at the rage problem where you're downloading a crap load first.
Wait a minute, what storage device can create that model that quickly?
Yeah, a 600 terabyte laptop on a 3 terabyte model is... But this is the thing. This is what everyone remembers about Euclideon, is that
you said it's
they promise a lot and they
$600
say so many things, but when you sort of get into it, you start to question.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe it's completely true. It would be awesome if it is, and with the dynamic lighting and such for static backgrounds, in theory you could do it. Deformable backgrounds are probably going to be difficult.
You guys should definitely watch the video. Even though it has like kind of a cheesy intro, the tech that they show is really cool. And in fact, towards the end of the video, when they get into this scene in the screenshot here, like the outdoor scene, that to me is the most impressive thing about it. Now, there's kind of two parts to it, right? Because they're using point scanners, which is basically the shortcut to how do you create content at a seemingly infinite detail level.
Yep.
Right, so this is not created content. This is copied content. This is copied from the real world and then turned into a 3D model.
Yeah.
Which is who has the copyright on that, and do they need to pay?
Well, this forest has that copyright, and they will be pissed about it. But like, so people like they were talking about using the 3D scanners at like historical sites,
historical landmark
right,
sites.
where you can basically imagine using this technology gets faster. You're using something like Oculus Rift or some whatever better implementation of that there is, and now you have these incredibly accurate 3D rendered representations of these things where I don't have to go to a museum anymore.
Yep.
And how long that's been promised since the frickin' Encarta CD came out, right? And when you see the video, and it's at a low frame rate, but the detail level there is pretty astounding.
Yeah, it's about 32 frames per second, I think they were saying.
It looks a lot lower than that in the video, but
okay,
maybe.
Yeah, and when they can get a hold of 1980s Cheryl Teagues and LiDAR her with Oculus Rift and force feedback, then
wow.
See, now this is what could have saved Euclideon if they'd just done that back in the day when it was worth it.
So they have reached out to us about talking about this stuff. I think what we're going to try to do is do a Skype interview with them and make a live stream out of it. I don't think they're going to fly here from Australia, but hopefully they can, if they'll be willing to send us a couple of things to demo locally. I did mention that. Scan our office so that we can get our audience to be able to walk around the studio and stuff in 3D. I think that would be cool.
That'd be cool.
Turn into a quick live map.
Yeah, but have action figure size people.
The game would be
so you have to like rappel off of the desk and
off the
ceiling and
stuff.
stuff.
Off the wall, rappelling down the wall would be awesome.
Yeah. All right, I think we can make it happen. Now take that whole size and multiply it by 1,000.
Yep.
And now we're going to make the best Halo map ever.
3,000 terabytes.
3,000
No, it was Soldier of Fortune that used to do that mod.
Where
you were tiny in like a dollhouse or more or less. Yeah. Oh, it was so much fun.
Let's talk about some other stuff. HTC making the Google Nexus 9, possibly with the Tegra K1. Apparently this came out in the lawsuit documents between Qualcomm and Samsung and NVIDIA. Apparently, quote, the HTC Nexus 9 expected in the third quarter of 2014 is also expected to use the Tegra K1. This was in part of the legal proceedings of what was happening. It has since been revised to remove the reference. While the K1 has a significant GPU to back it up, it will likely be driving a very high-resolution display. So Nexus 9 would be the larger version of the Google tablet, which I think would be really cool.
It would be the smaller version of the Nexus 10.
Or that. Or the bigger version of the Nexus 7.
Nope.
It's like a phablet.
It's like an iPhone 6 Plus.
It's like an iPhone 6 Plus Plus. Only it won't bend.
6 Plus Plus?
So that's cool. I'm down with that. Like I said, I'm a big fan. I like the Shield tablet quite a bit. What's that? That's a 7.9-inch screen, so this would be a little bit bigger than that. I'd be curious to see what they do with the aesthetics of that. Do they make it thinner? Do they make it sleeker? Do they make it more interesting that way? And the more devices that had Tegra K1 out there, the better, as I'm eager to see how game developers push that on the mobile side, because there are still some demos that I saw at the Tegra K1 kind of editors and tech days that have yet to be released, which is dumb.
There's a lot of potential in that platform.
Yeah, give me that War Thunder so I can play that. Evil Within system requirements. Jeremy, do you have enough power to run this?
Well, I don't know. Can you ship me a GTX 670 with 4 gigs of RAM?
I don't have any of those.
That's what they actually published, and that's not a thing as far as I know.
They probably made.
There might have been one.
With 4 gig. Yeah,
sure.
But it's the Rage engine. You want as much VRAM as you can possibly throw at it.
It looks pretty good. It comes out next week or something? Is that what it is?
Very soon. But I mean, the more reasonable ones are you want a quad-core Core i7, 4 gigs of system memory, 50 gigs of hard drive space, as I said, Rage game, and a 64-bit OS. Again, Rage engine.
Interesting, because
I'm guessing you'll be capped at about 60 frames a second.
It's very possible. I was installing and playing around with the Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor today, and that has a recommended system spec. Actually, I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to look it up because I want to make sure I get this correct. Shadow of Mordor. And, dummy, already had it open. Let's see. Let's find our specifications here, Ken, because this is... Okay. Recommended 64-bit operating system, Core i7 3770 or FX 8350 or faster, 8 gigs of RAM, GTX 660 or 7950, but then there is the, where's this at? Middle-earth HD content. This is, it's higher res textures and everything. They recommend a DirectX compatible NVIDIA or AMD card with at least 6 gigabytes of RAM and the latest drivers.
Oh, that's cheap. Pick one up.
They're recommending a video card with 6 gigs of memory.
Just buy Titan Black.
Which there is really just that one. Titan and Titan Black.
They did some 780s.
They did do some 780s with 6 gigs of memory. I will say, I've been running it with the HD pack on. You really don't need 6 gigs of memory. Although, you know, it's running at a fairly low frame rate at this point.
Hey,
we're running
AMD did have some 7970s.
With 8 gigs?
Right?
Yeah.
Had 6 gigs.
6? Yeah. Okay.
Not very many. Like
yeah, because they were 3 gig by default. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of crazy. I'm all for pushing the hardware forward, but that's a little bit nuts. The game does look very good, I'll say, but it definitely could use a little bit more anti-aliasing love. So maybe we'll try out some of that DSR on it too.
You're gonna make that game run.
I'm gonna run. So I'm running benchmarks at 4K at Ultra with the GTX 980 is getting around 37 frames per second.
That's like kind of playable.
It's almost kinda. You know, I don't think SLI or Crossfire is working yet. There's a game patch I think that's coming for that soon, but
because it needs it.
It does, and it needs 40 gigs of hard drive space, so it's not significantly less than your Evil Within there. Okay, this was...
Hey, remember when MechWarrior 2 came out?
No.
It required 800 megs of memory, and most people
and
had
that was
a 1
obnoxious.
gig to 1.2 gig hard drive. So they got to clear off all that space to get 3D version of MechWarrior 2.
I do remember playing it. I remember playing that. I don't remember having a storage issue, but...
Somewhere I
remember getting caught at school because I cleared off the storage for that game.
Oops.
Somewhere I have all 4 versions of that. Like the actual discs. Like the S3 Verge version, the Voodoo,
HDI Rage, Voodoo,
version.
3DFX, yeah.
Nice.
Oh, come on. You didn't memorize the entire manual so you could use a hacked version?
What? I didn't even like... You know how
Oh,
long
you had to
would
look
take?
up a certain
That
word
was
on a
when
page.
the verification was based on the
Yeah.
manual. It's page 16, word 18.
Oh, yeah.
You don't remember those? I remember that.
Yeah.
The word is platypus.
Other news, NVIDIA. So this happened on Thursday during our live stream. Tom mentioned this, and it had not actually been, as far as I know, really discussed or confirmed. So apparently there was a rumor going around that NVIDIA was going to, that they were going to support adaptive sync, which is the variable refresh standard that Visa adopted, and that AMD has kind of overtaken and called FreeSync.
Yep.
So when Tom was here, he stated quite in no
uncertain terms.
Right.
That currently.
So his quote was, "There is no truth to that rumor of NVIDIA Adaptive Sync support, and we have made no official comments about Adaptive Sync. One thing I can say is that NVIDIA as a company is 100% dedicated to G-Sync. We are going to continue to invest in G-Sync, and it is a way we can make the gaming experience better. We have no need for Adaptive Sync. We have no intention of implementing it."
Yep.
So adaptive sync is different than FreeSync. Get that out there, right? FreeSync is going to be AMD's implementation of the adaptive sync capability, and then they build on it and make it a product and a technology.
And that's just really the part of the standard that says that you can basically tell the
display to wait.
Yeah.
And it's also asks the display. It passes more than just a standard EDID information, the extended display information data or something like that.
And you know what's interesting about that?
What?
Centaur and S3 will support that.
Really?
No.
No, I'm just kidding.
No. So basically what this means is that NVIDIA doesn't plan on supporting adaptive sync. There's going to be two different variable refresh standards for monitors. There's going to be adaptive sync and the FreeSync thereof, and then there's going to be G-Sync. The adaptive sync portion of the DisplayPort standard is completely optional. It is not a requirement, so NVIDIA could continue to have DP 1.2a, DP 1.3, DP 1.4 capable ports. They just don't have to support that because it is an optional portion of the standard.
Well, in all honesty, nobody else is supporting that thing either from the sounds of it.
Well, I mean, all you've got left really that matters is Intel.
I mean, display manufacturers.
No, three display manufacturers have said they were going, in an AMD press release, three different display scalers said that they're going to support adaptive sync.
Yes, that I know.
And to be honest with you, from the scaler point of view, there's no reason to not include it.
I guess.
Right?
It's more work for them.
But once you get it done, you're kind of done, and you just copy it on to your next things.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you leave it, I think as a scaler manufacturer, you say AMD is kind of pressuring people to do this because they want to be able to have that technology as well. So if you're MediaTek or MTech or whoever, you just say, yeah, sure, fine, I'll implement it here. Here's the way to access it. You're on your own. Like, I'm not doing QA, I'm not doing any of that stuff. And you can probably get away with doing it pretty cheap. The problem is then it all falls back on AMD for QA and getting it to work well and all that stuff. And that's something that NVIDIA is basically saying, hey, it's not easy to do. If it were super easy to do, we wouldn't have been late to market with it.
They would have just piggybacked on the same standard that
that standard hadn't existed until G-Sync came out.
Well, right, but I'm sure that people saw it coming because, these things are going draft for a while before they get ratified.
No. This one was not that way at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Still a shame that AMD didn't do it in their laptops.
AMD pushed it very quickly through to DP 1.2a. That's why there was already a DP 1.2a out there. This is like a DP 1.2a revision to it.
Well, that's always what baffled me is that AMD could have done this years ago on the laptops as a power saving option.
Everybody could have,
and they just didn't choose to. They said no, nobody's going to be interested.
Well, nobody thought to do it this way. That the genius of G-Sync is not the technology side, right? The genius of G-Sync is that, hey, we can take this variable refresh that has been used for power savings for a long time on laptops and use it to benefit gamers. And then there's a whole bunch of other technical stuff that has to happen and educational stuff and theoretical stuff on making it a good experience.
Yeah.
But the idea of just doing it was really all it took. The idea, I think a lot of people went into the whole G-Sync thing with, well, there's going to be G-Sync monitors, but at some point in the future, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, there will be adaptive sync monitors, and both NVIDIA and AMD cards will be able to run those monitors and do variable refresh. And that doesn't appear to be the case anymore. It appears that you will pick a monitor vendor. If you think VRR is an important feature, which I definitely do, you will pick your monitor, and then you will have to pick your GPU based on it, or vice versa. Your monitor selection will be dependent on your GPU selection at that point. It sucks.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
I completely understand why NVIDIA is doing it the way it does. They believe they have a technology, and that they believe they have done it way better than AMD will be able to do it in any kind of reasonable time span.
It's not that their display won't work on an AMD.
The VRR won't work.
The VRR won't work, sure.
Right. But that's the only reason you would buy one of those monitors. It's going to be more expensive.
Well, I mean, my other part to my kind of counter argument there is I don't flip back and forth between video cards that often.
You don't. I think a lot of people do. A lot of people go with, what's the hot hand at the time? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we know you've got an SSD fetish. It's okay.
That has nothing to do with video cards. Like, I've just stuck with one and just... Like,
I bought... You had a 285 for way too long. I understand. But there are a lot of people that will go back and forth, right? There are some people that won't. They're fanboys. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Red Team Plus, whatever you want to call them. You know, Team Green, all that other crap. But there are some people that go like, hey, they make the better part with the better performance at the price point that I want, and blah, blah, blah. I go that way.
Yeah.
And monitors are one of those devices that people tend to have for a very long period of time.
Well, this might extend. I mean, yes, it kind of sucks in that respect where this is tied to this and that's tied to that if you want to use all the features, but it might be a good way for AMD to stand out. If they can pull it off and kind of make better somehow, like make
But now the only way they can stand out is to make it better.
Yeah.
So and I guess it could be cheaper too.
Yeah, if they can make it better and they can make it cheaper, because G-Sync monitors aren't exactly cheap.
They're not.
So if they can figure that out, right, it should be a lower cost, in theory.
Yeah.
Given that it's just a firmware kind of level.
I will say this about FreeSync.
Oh, yes. What day is it?
It is October 1st, and I was promised prototype FreeSync monitors in the month of September, and that didn't happen.
That's done. So
it is October 1st. Speaking of which, I was promised something else today by AMD that I didn't get, so I need to follow up with that too.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that, right? And
yeah.
And I think NVIDIA's stance has been, it's a lot harder than you think it is to make this work right. It's not as simple as hold off on VBlank, please.
Yeah, because if you just hold, you can't just hold off on VBlank.
There's all kinds of stuff that goes. And AMD has always said it's easy to do and we'll do it cheap. And if they could do it, great. But we need to see it. And we've heard from AMD too many times about, hey, yeah, no, we can do that, and then
it doesn't
lack of action on it. Yeah. The last thing I'll say here is that Tom did have an interesting statement that I think just one to think on, one to grow on, if you will. He says, don't think that we're done. G-Sync is not done. Think of G-Sync as the start of NVIDIA solving the problems for gamers that are related to displays. G-Sync is our first technology that makes games look better on displays, but you can start looking at displays and make a lot of things better, which I love, that they're going down that road.
Yeah.
In that,
push it.
If they're going to have their own display ecosystem and it's going to be kind of proprietary in that regard, screw it. Do it all. Like, change everything.
Yeah.
Right? Why do you need to scan out top to bottom? Scan it once.
Yeah, just scan.
Yeah, I was going to say, because LCDs have a lot more flexibility in what they can do with their pixels than the typical CRT with an electron gun.
If you can,
back and forth.
I think if you can make a monitor that you can say you're only going to be able to use it on an NVIDIA discrete GPU, which they're pretty close to being able to say, right? Then I think you give a whole lot of capability to a GPU vendor to change things that have been static.
You could completely just go outside the bounds of the regular, like, it may be a DisplayPort cable, but just physically, like electrically, it may be completely different.
It's going to be bandwidth at the very, very end, in between your computer and your monitor, because if you think about a per pixel, if you can look at a pixel on your LCD and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to apply this equation to it. I'm going to apply this delta C, the change in color over time, and you can apply that to the entire thing and make it just look absolutely fluid.
Yeah.
I think that's where the future is going to be. And by the way, I trademarked and patented that, and so NVIDIA and AMD need to.
Well, that's about as vague as every other patent I've ever read. So
pretty much. But you know what?
But they all passed too.
Soon.
Jim, are you going to say one last thing, or?
Oh, I was going to say all those patents passed too. So
okay.
He's got a leg to stand on.
So that's our update. I will touch base tomorrow. I'm going to try to reach out to those guys at AMD and say, hey,
where's my FreeSync?
Now what? Real quick, Apple A8 die shot released. Here it is. Ta-da!
Yay!
You got SRAM.
Is that those CPU. Awesome guys that
by the way,
CPUs?
Does this CPU look like...
It's a little blotchy.
It looks like somebody was drunk or something when they were doing this. Let me turn this down here.
I mean,
it looks like S on a shingle.
It looks like a petri dish.
It says new circular transistors.
Well, that bit looks like broccoli.
Yeah.
Well, it is Apple, and their new headquarters is going to be all circle and stuff. So, maybe crop circles is the thing on CPU dies.
I don't know. It's weird. Nothing else really to say here other than this is cool to look at.
Yeah.
And the fact that people could do it at all.
Yeah, it's cool that someone can take a shipping chip and do that.
Yep.
Wait, scroll up a little bit. There. What is all in the empty space?
That's for you to figure out.
What, up here?
Yeah, this is just... I mean, okay, you got your dual core.
You got your PLLs.
You got your what's all of that other stuff that's there?
That's
look
what
at
the
all
lawyers use to sue Samsung. It's free bandwidth that they just get from any Apple user.
that. Yes.
This is your iOS 8
Yes.
acceleration.
Oh, it's not big enough.
No, it's iOS 8 bloat.
Right here.
It's right there, yeah.
In this corner up here there's lots of faces drawn in silicon.
That would be the bugs.
Right? Yeah.
It's a signature of every team member.
What they do is there's actually extra GPU clusters that they just didn't want to use.
Yeah.
Lol.
So we've got these extra space, so screw it. So there's that. What else we got? Next up, Catalyst 14.9 came out. Jeremy, anything interesting here?
Oh, well, I installed it just before the podcast and hasn't died yet, and the Ifinity's been behaving much nicer.
Have you tried shutting that system down since then? Because somebody in the chat said their system wouldn't shut down with that installed. They had to go back to the prior beta or something.
How'd they go back to the prior beta?
It's always easy to shut a system down.
Well, he had
Getting
to
it to come back is sometimes
he had
an
to
issue,
hard shut it down or something. I don't know.
So what? Any other changes here?
But I have never, since I upgraded, I haven't yet created an Ifinity display of zero monitors, which was essentially the issue I was having with the previous one.
That's amazing.
But it's not just that. One of the things it does do is add support for the R9 280, which is a pretty new chip. It will play nicely with Windows 10 Tech Preview, from what I've been seeing from Roy's tweets.
Yeah, I think I saw Robert tweet that was the driver to use if you were installing the Windows 10.
So it perfectly timed because, hey, that just became something you can play with. As usual, there's a variety of game improvements, as you expect from both NVIDIA and AMD. And one of the nicer things is that Mantle will now work on a lot of their mobile products that use the Enduro technology. So there's a couple of games that they've got. There's some games, and then Starswarm runs a hell of a lot better now.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly, Starswarm runs a hell of a lot better right now. It's still a benchmark. You do have to accept that, but that's a fairly impressive gain.
Yeah. 274%.
The general, just sort of errata, but I've been playing with it for a bit of an hour now, and then on the podcast. And so far, so good.
Cool. Get those if you got them. I just installed them on a system here as well for our Shadow of Mordor testing. So we'll see what that does, I guess. I don't know. Broadwell-U BGA lineup leaks. Intel's, Scott wrote this up, Intel's upcoming 14nm product line, Broadwell. We've already talked about Broadwell-Y. This is even, I guess this is actually a little bit larger. Oof, this is a big file, big image here. Larger, faster chips. What kind of TDPs are we talking about here? Up to 15 watts. So those are a little bit larger than the Y. But basically, anything you want to know about the Core i7-5650U, 2-core, 4-thread, up to 3.2 gigahertz, Intel HD 6000 graphics.
Yeah.
DDR3 at 1866, 4 megs of cache. I don't know what all this is. BGA. These are all BGA parts. Don't get excited, guys. This isn't any detail on the user replaceable parts. This is all for the integrated parts here. So,
but hey, at 16 watts, not bad, eh?
Yeah. No, I mean this is essentially the step up from Broadwell-Y. So you would expect to see this in kind of like laptops, right? Broadwell-Y mostly in tablets and really low power, long battery life laptops, and this kind of in your more standard devices. Very curious to see how the graphics performance changes in this versus what I was able to test with our Core M hands-on time that we had as well. So lots of detail here, lots of VR zone leaks, pretty much everything all the time. So this is kind of information that we all expected, I guess. Nothing stand out to anybody in particular? Jeremy or Josh?
Nice low power.
Yeah.
Iris 6100.
All right, well let's finish up on Windows 10, or as I like to call it,
not 9.
Win 10.
Windows 2.
We're not in binary. Win 10. I'm not going to read through this story posted up by Scott word for word, but
Start menu is back.
Start menu is back. That's my
Metro tiles in the start menu.
You can run Metro apps in desktop mode. My favorite thing is the quad snap.
The what?
The quad snap.
Oh, that's what that was?
It is the ability to snap 4 different windows to the 4 corners of your machine.
Right.
I think that's going to be
you can have multiple desktops too, right?
Yeah, multiple desktops I think is amazing. So I think for somebody like me who has like hey, I'm browsing the internet, playing music, looking at random crap desktop, and then have one where it switches over to this is my writing mode, whereas like here's all of my tabs open for writing and Word check and all that kind of stuff.
It's the music app.
It's a pity that no other operating system has ever done that before, eh?
The music app is running
none of them
in a window on the desktop with the snap.
No.
What is that?
That's
Ubuntu?
impossible.
Yeah, is that Linux?
Is it what? Yeah.
So those are my favorite features: are quad snap and multi desktop. Anybody
There's
else?
Continuum. Sort of their bow towards we didn't make a mistake by doing the touchscreen interface, but we know that you guys like to use your mouse and keyboard, so it's now going to detect on a lot of the stuff like Microsoft sold hardware for a wee while, didn't they?
Yeah.
But if you've got a machine that's a tablet that docks to a keyboard, it will detect the second that you detach it and switch, or at least ask you, do you want to switch from a keyboard interface that's optimized for keyboard and mouse to a touchscreen optimized one? I guess in a way it's interesting because, with bring your own device, that is going to become a lot more common in the enterprise environment. So in the one hand, I don't understand what this desperate need they have to have it look the exact same across all platforms, be it a cell phone, be it a tablet, be it a laptop, be it a workstation. But they want to do it, and this way at least, if you want to say, leave me the hell alone, I like this thing, and I like this thing, then it will. And that's kind of nice. I'm also interested in the way that there's not going to be an RTM. There's not going to be previews. There is this tech preview, which is essentially available to anyone. Microsoft did mention earlier this week that they're going to be watching how you use it. Not you, like the NSA, over one shoulder and them over the other. But they're going to take an overall look at how people are interfacing with it. And I think they're going to find the vast majority of people are using a mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, no joke.
So, at least from my perspective, this is usable again. There was no way I could justify an upgrade to Windows 8.
Okay. I want to try it out, but I just hate putting them on my own systems.
That's why you use VMware.
But then it's not really my own system. I don't use it in the same way, right? It needs to be my primary machine where I'm using it. It's I carry 2 cell phones, but in reality, this is the cell phone I use all the time, right? So it's not quite the same. You need to use it. What I need to do is take out this SSD and put it off to the side, put in a new SSD, install Windows 10, and kind of start fresh and see if I could get it going that direction. Also, important changes: command prompt. You can now copy and paste in command prompt.
You could always copy and paste in command prompt
with keyboard shortcuts.
I was trying to say this too.
You could not hit Control-C, Control-V before. The mark to copy was stupid. It was awful. It made no sense that it couldn't work like every other application in the damn operating system.
Or every other command line terminal interface ever.
Yeah. The fact that I could
you shouldn't need a mouse to use a terminal.
That's true. You shouldn't have to use a mouse to use a terminal. That is a good point.
Go use Vim or Mo then.
Okay.
But see, the thing is what's the other command prompt?
I'm Control-Ving
the
PowerShell.
PowerShell. You could Control-V in PowerShell.
Yes, you could.
But you couldn't do it in command prompt. It was dumb. Now it's fixed.
Yay.
So let's see. Typical shortcuts: Shift, Select, Control-C, Control-V. All that works. They're even a transparency option for their command prompt.
Oh yeah.
So,
and the only other thing which they did not really explain at all, which is really annoying because it was one of the big things that stopped a lot of people from developing for Windows 8, was the Microsoft Store.
Yeah.
They're implying that organizations can now create a customized store, so you can have an in-house store which you can load apps to without paying, and I honestly do not remember how much it was to license with Microsoft, but it was not cheap. Whereas previous with 8, it had to pass their qualifications, which did involve you paying a crap load of money to Microsoft.
Yeah, they tried doing their
I like to try
thing.
it. If anybody in the chat room or that watches this week or listens this week wants to send in any feedback to us, I'd love to hear it. I'm just, like, we're not putting it on our GPU test bed. We're not putting it on our storage test bed or anything like that yet. But it's like, in reality, like, if I look at my computer that I use every day, what do I do every day? I'm using Google Chrome. I'm using Firefox. I'm using Photoshop, Excel.
RedTube.
That's
most of it.
RedTube isn't Chrome, so that counts. But that's pretty much all I use, right? FileZilla, some weird
Dropbox.
things like that. Dropbox.
Not even Dropbox in the office.
Well, I do have it on mine.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But yeah, so I mean,
Next time he's out grabbing lunch, Al, just install VMware on his machine, do a Win 7, Win 8 boot, and he'll never know the difference.
Yeah.
If I put it on a VM, is it going to perform the same?
It'd be a tiny bit slower.
Yeah.
Hardware virtualization, bro.
I don't like
Intel
has been
pushing that.
Let's do our hardware software picks of the week, ladies and gents. I am picking Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, available on the PC as of today. User reviews are, quote, overwhelmingly positive, according to Steam's page here. That means...
Did you kiss an orc?
95% of the 1,935 user reviews for this game are positive.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
What do you think of it?
I played it for about an hour and a half or so. I liked it. It's fun. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit of Assassin's Creed mixed with a little bit of Batman combat style. Reviews on gaming websites are actually really, really positive as well, which is odd because it's not like a Lord of the Rings game that has typically come out. Right? It's not a strategy game. It's not you are controlling the primary characters and you are the fate of the world is in your hands. This is one guy's story in it. I'm not going to give away the story, but it involves wraiths and you kill a lot of orcs and urks. Is that how you pronounce that?
I could have sworn you kissed one first, though, didn't you?
No, you kiss your wife, and then you kill the urks.
You torture them, right?
I don't want to get into the controversy crap because it's pissing me off. Some people say that, oh yeah, look, you're this white slave owner, and you. I don't know. It's
the review lost me when it said what's actually happening here. It's like, no, wait, it's a video game.
It's a video game in a world that doesn't exist.
Yeah, nothing is actually happening in there.
But I am channeling J.R.R. Tolkien over my Ouija board, and I know.
So it is $49.99. It is available today, and you can get that HD content as well for free if you want to test out your 6 gigabyte graphics card. I mean, even without the HD pack, it's asking for 3770 or higher, 8 gigs of system memory, a GTX 660 or 7950 or better. Right?
That's pretty up there.
That's pretty up there. And the game does look good. You should turn down quality settings and up AA in terms of just get the best experience out of it, in my opinion. But a pretty good game. Yeah, we're checking out. We'll have some, hopefully by sometime tomorrow, I'll have some performance data up of it, looking at the 980, 970, 290X, and 290. Don't trust the in-game benchmark. I will say that. Don't trust the in-game benchmark.
Oh, that's always a handy feature.
Yeah. Jeremy, what do you got?
Well, one of the nice things that came out this week for students was the equivalent of Google for Work, which costs you $10 a month, but gives you unlimited storage. To the students who, if their school signs up for an utterly free Google Apps program, boom, you now have unlimited storage for the entire time that you're getting an education. That's kind of a handy thing.
In fact, did they delete it all?
For engineers and such, it's going to handle up to 5 terabyte files, which could be they don't exactly have an open source CAD CAM or
go ahead and upload that
equivalent yet. But hey,
oh my Lord,
as long as you've got a university pipeline, take advantage of it. And honestly, it is a good solution. It's going to let you work with your coworkers. It's going to let you work with your professor. And honestly, compared to Office and the Microsoft Cloud, how many outages have we had, Ryan,
on our email
using Google Apps?
Like none. maybe one.
Yeah, in years.
Yeah.
And I call it Office 358 now for a reason.
This picture could not be more college, of course, if you looked at it. Look at that guy. He's wearing a Princeton shirt. He's got his sandals on. Now the guy next to him's got the hoodie with the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you is
really
everywhere
creepy
girl, but I guess she's getting old now, isn't she?
Yeah, where's the creepy CEO of that clothing company who looks plastic and has big white teeth?
American Eagle guy?
Isn't that all of them?
I don't know.
No. He doesn't want ugly
Lululemon
people to wear his
guy?
clothes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway.
I don't know. Hey, cool story anyway, Josh. But why don't you tell about your next cool story, which is your pick?
It's a cool story. You know, if you like audio and headphones and
I hate
things like
audio.
that, audio sucks. It's overrated. You know, if you really want some good headphones and you want to have them pretty accurate and not too terribly expensive, then the Gradair SR60Es are fantastic products for the price. I've been a big fan of Grado for a while, and these are
Sold by the
just-
official Grado store.
Yeah, official. You know, they're not incredibly comfortable. You have to get used to them. You got to break them in. They just, you know, ergonomics are not great. But what really counts is the sound. That's where it excels at. So for $79,
Yeah.
they're fantastic for what you get.
Ken, you were going to say something?
Never mind.
Oh,
Cool story.
okay. Good job.
I don't know if having incredibly good, uncomfortable headphones really matters. I'd rather have some not as good, comfortable headphones, I think.
Hey,
That's why I get my Beats, bro.
Except I just spent more money and bought comfortable.
Alan, slap
and
him.
It's like there's no circulation to my earlobes, but the sound is so awesome.
Well, yeah, you got to isolate.
Yeah.
they're like a nice pair of leather shoes. You got to break them in first.
That is true.
And then they're fantastic.
That is true.
See, I just got headphones with velvet instead.
Good leather shoes have to be broken in.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. All right, Alan.
My pick is $0 as long as you have VMware. And that is the technical preview. I would say just try the thing
Isn't
out.
it $0 if you don't have VMware?
You have to buy a VMware workstation if you want like
No,
good
you don't.
VMware. You can get VMware Player.
Can't you just install it? Like you don't have to use
VMware?
You can use VirtualBox.
No,
you could
your
use-
pick is Windows, is it not?
Yeah, that's free. That's $0.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You said it's $0 as long
I
as you
mean,
have
if you want to
firmware or
install it on your
VMware.
own, I would recommend installing it in a VM. Like I would, you don't want to just go formatting your whole system and just throwing this on it.
Can you use VM Player?
You can use VMware Player. You just have to have VMware Player won't create a VM, so you'd need a empty VM image,
What do we use
which you can get.
for Ubuntu?
I'm pretty sure VMware Player will create an image.
I thought that was the one restriction of.
I don't know. That's what we
Player.
use to do our VM here. But
Yeah.
so
Anyway.
your pick is the Windows 10
Yeah, try it out.
tech preview. I
You know.
want to.
Get used to it, because it'll be the thing soon, right?
Oh, that guy's haircut.
Yeah, that guy's got the bowl cut going on.
No, that's not a bowl
It's a
cut,
crooked bowl cut.
No, it's not a bowl cut
No?
at all. No.
Isn't that
it's
a girl's
just-
haircut?
He looks like someone said it best. He's an emaciated Sylvester Stallone.
He does have the facial structure
Wow,
of a Sylvester
yeah.
Stallone.
Sylvester
he does.
Stallone meets Don
Okay.
Matrick meets.
I don't know. Like, Ellen
Adrian.
DeGeneres.
Somebody should do. Go back to Ryan's screen. Somebody should do a bad lip reading in Sylvester Stallone voice of that. You can have him saying whatever you want because he's talking for a really long time with different camera angles and everything. You could really go to town with that.
Yeah. So was there
Right.
any difference in the Enterprise Edition stuff that you were looking up earlier?
No, they didn't have the enterprise version out earlier
Okay.
to download, so
What should
that's not
be
what I
the
was
difference?
looking at. I don't know. I'm gonna find out.
What's
Different
new?
networking
I downloaded
components.
I downloaded it during the podcast. I wanted to see if storage spaces was going to be any different.
Okay. Mm.
I can tell you that in the regular version, it's pretty much the same as Windows 8.1.
Yeah.
Like just the storage spaces stuff, it's all the same.
Gotcha.
So
I'm curious to try out Windows Tech. Did they mention anything about a potential release time frame for Windows 10 yet?
I haven't seen anything, actually.
Like how long the tech preview would go or anything like that? That's the other thing I hate about
the tech
preview
preview,
operating systems
it's
is
supposed
that
to be,
sometimes they used to expire. Like
It's supposed to be 90 days. That's what I heard.
See, that's dumb. Like get people used to it and then.
Well,
then
they
what?
usually make it so that something else will come out within that
Cool,
window.
just all I want to do is upgrade my operating
Right.
system every 90 days.
I don't know.
You don't do that in the first place?
Well, you know what? You could switch to Apple and be able to do that.
Oh, the consumer is 2015. Someone in the chat saying Q2 2015.
Well, that's only 3 months away.
2015-ish.
It's October 1st, guys, remember?
That's
Nope.
more than 3 months.
Denying it.
October to November to December to January.
Nope.
Second quarter.
Nope. No CES. No, thank you.
Oh, you didn't say second quarter. They just said 2015.
Q2. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be May. April, May, June. Q2.
Well, it depends on if we're talking fiscal or financial.
Yeah.
Choose my favorite quarter. April, May, June.
And it's supposed to be
April,
free
May, June,
for
yeah.
anybody that has 8.1, right?
This?
Supposedly. Yeah.
I think it's just free.
No, I think you have to have something.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Like you can't be on Windows 3.1 and be like, oh, yeah.
Can I install it to a fresh drive? I mean, that's
Oh,
essentially
come
what
on.
you
That guy can make a new video.
Oh, this one.
Windows
you can install
3.1 all the way up
the
to
tech
10.
preview. Yeah.
That guy did upgrades all the way up.
I think it was 7.
That's
The one that he
impressive.
did from 3.1 all the way to 7, which was just impressive.
That sounds amazing.
Must have
Shocked
taken a
that
long
even
time.
Worked.
Well, sure. This is what the problem of Windows is backwards compatibility. All right,
That's why
guys.
it's not Windows 9.
We are going to wrap up the show. Thank you guys for joining us. If you watched us live, thanks for hanging out. Again, pcper.com/live is the URL where we record that on Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And you can go to pcper.com/podcast to find our previous episodes, the RSS files, the YouTube links, all the stuff you need to stay up to date with what we are doing. We will be back next week, even a little bit further into the month of October, to talk about what other crap has happened. We'll see you next time, guys. I'm Ryan Schraub.
Jeremy Hellstrom.
Joshua Riff.
Alan Malentano.
See ya.